What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to YGOPD, your Yu-Gi-Oh! Professional Development, and today I am back with another installment of how to beat one of the top meta decks in less than 5 minutes. Both by the title and the thumbnail, I'm sure you've guessed that today's feature is Purrely. Of course, before we get started, I wanted to say a quick shout out and thank you to all of my new subs. Apparently, when you pass 1K, YouTube turns off notifications for individual people that have subbed. So in my next video, I want to make sure and go back and mention everyone, but I just wanted to say thank you for now for everyone who has decided to join the community. And with that said, let's go ahead and throw 5 minutes on the clock and go over how to beat Purrely. Okay, starting off, of course, I'm going to talk about more of the going first stuff, more so hand traps and floodgates. There are a ton of other cards maybe that don't necessarily make this cut, but I want to make sure that I still mention cards that are the most impactful and have the most wide coverage in different decks. It may be a little bit different depending on what you're playing and your play style, but again, I want to try to cover the stuff that is most widely used. So we'll go ahead and talk about the going first piece. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you're stopping their XYZ summons or turning off their ability to play spells as much as possible. Those are your two go-to routes. There are a few hand traps that make that possible. Ghost Ogre, Droll and Lockbird, and Gamma are quite powerful. The first two, in terms of Ghost Ogre and Gamma, anything you can do to remove bodies off the board, as well as maybe dealing with my friend Purrely through Ghost Ogre, is going to be powerful. If you can get a Droll off early and just shut them down from adding anything else from their deck to their hand, then more power to you. Those three are kind of the main go-tos both for this format for Purrely and Super Heavy Samurai. In terms of more floodgates or full-on turn stoppers, Dimensional Barrier isn't actually that bad, since the Purrely trap already needs to have a Purrely Xyz on the field, and if you don't let them get to that, they really can't go anywhere. Anti-Spell Fragrance is of course a no-brainer. Just keep in mind, again, they're going to play mostly quick play spells except for like my friend Purrely, so they might be able to chain one or two to it, but if you have other cards to prevent them from continuing to climb or even get into a Zeus and you prevent that, you should be good to go. I think the king of all floodgates right now that is a very underrated card if your deck can utilize it is called Power Filter. I've seen this pop up a little bit here and there. A bit of an older card but got a more recent reprint in one of the later OTS, like maybe 16 or so. Basically prevents both players from special summoning monsters with 1,000 or less attack. That's going to do a lot to Purrely and to Super Heavy Samurai, since those early combo pieces are falling under that. It even does a little bit for other decks in the format like now. Like I said, with Super Heavy Samurai, Sword Soul, they can't get their tokens, as well as even Math Mech with some of their extenders like Sigma and the Subtraction and Addition. All those are 1,000 or less. So those are a few options for going first, both for floodgates and for hand traps. Now I want to talk about for going second. Going second, there aren't as many options as you would typically think. You're looking for one of two options: removal through summoning mechanics or removal through quote-unquote affecting the player. Since unlike Kashtira or Rise Heart, Noir is just continuously unaffected by card effects, period, you need to explore a few different options. Go-tos, of course, are going to be cards like Santa Claus, Kaiju, or even Kurikara. You'll still have to deal with some of the backlash from getting rid of it, and they may even get some draws before you get to drop one of those bad boys down, but you're going to at least be able to play the game a bit and clear it. Herald of the Abyss, I feel like, is an honorable mention here. Again, I kind of mentioned this back in cash format and was using that a bit, since it quote-unquote forces the player to send a card. This card is slowly falling out of favor, again, because of Super Heavy Samurai making a ton of big negate boards. Same thing with Sword Soul. It's not as good right now, but still something worth mentioning. If you don't want to buy Kurikaras and you want to test something else, pick a couple 50-cent copies of these out of your box and throw them in your deck, see how they do. Evenly is also worth mentioning because you can at least boil down their board to ideally just the Noir and then make it a bit more manageable, whether you have another Kaiju to pair with it or something like that. Playing through just that might be doable for you. Thrust and Tactics are also cards I want to mention here, but more specifically Thrust. That effect to draw is typically going to happen before your main phase, in the draw phase or the standby phase. So anytime you're going to see in a format where there are effects ideally happening no matter what during your turn, these cards are going to be powerful. If you can get enough materials off of Noir and bait some stuff out, you might just be able to take it with your talents or search something else that might be useful with Thrust. The last situational board breaker that I think is worth mentioning, because we're still at the tail end of cash format as well, is XYZ Encore. Again, our two top meta contenders here outside of Super Heavy Samurai, being Purrely and Kashtira, are Xyz focused, which this card thankfully does get around Noir, and can also still deal with a Rise Heart ideally while we have that in the forefront of our meta, hopefully before we get a ban list, maybe within a week or so. And that's it. How to deal with Purrely in ideally less than 5 minutes. Again, there are plenty of other honorable mentions I could throw in here, like Skill Drain and Spell Canceller for going first, as well as maybe Dimensional Shifter and Retaliating Sea as Floodgates as well, that kind of go first and or second, depending on your hand. But unfortunately, those cards aren't really as widely usable in a lot of decks across both the meta category and the rogue, but they're still worth mentioning. So if there's something I missed, or you have a spicy tech that you've been enjoying in the Mater side to deal with this matchup, please be sure to leave it below. Thank you all again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.